Hi, my name is Fitzpatrick. I'm the co-chair of the Marystown Heritage Museum. And we got quite a variety of artifacts here, very interesting ones, and they're not always hid away in little cages and little boxes. They're right in sight and you can touch most of them, so we're unique in that way. We were established in 1980. We're going strong ever since. I'm with the organization about 25 years myself, and Mr. Dober, he's the chairperson, and he's the pioneer of the whole museum. And we have our staff here. I'll introduce you to them a little bit later. I was a former shipyard worker, by the way. I'm a native from Marystown. Well, Marystown is the largest town on the Burin Peninsula. It's kind of the hub where everybody comes. All the amenities are here. We're in the great harbour here of Mortier Bay, which is one of the largest deep sea ice-free ports in Newfoundland, if not the east coast of Canada. And we're comprised of little settlements. We got Boy, Little Bay, Creston North, Creston South, Mooring Cove, Spanish Room, and some aspects were incorporated into Jean de Bay also. And all these little settlements, Marystown North and South, make up the whole town of Marystown. We have here, Marystown predominantly is a shipbuilding community. It was from the pioneers' days up to now, from the wooden schooners up to sailing boats, and since 1967 we established the Marystown shipyard. Prior to that there were wooden shipyards building fishing boats. In 1967 we opened a main shipyard here in Marystown, and we started building offshore deep sea trawlers. And then we progressed to building offshore oil supply vessels, some very large ones. We did fleets of those, and we did. This is a fisher's patrol vessel. That would be like guarding the safety of the fishermen out there and policing foreign trawlers. And these are Canadian Coast Guard ships that we built. These are in service today, still today, and
they were built here.
They were built here, yeah. This is the Wilfred Grenfell. She's still in service. I think she's based up in Halifax area right now. And other than that, we have many more models of schooners and aspects to the fishing. There's so much that you can't mention at all, but there's a lot of little pieces of stuff here that are very interesting.
Who donated these artifacts?
Well, the artifacts would have been collected by us, by donations. Some we gave from our own collections, and some we would purchase, and some would go in here on loan and just be recorded. We record it all, and if somebody wants their artifact back, they can. You know, this is one of our most popular. Here we have a three-dimensional map of the Grand Banks of Newfoundland, the island of Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and part of Quebec and Labrador. And it's to scale, the depths of the water, and the main fishing grounds would be here, the fishing off the Grand Banks. And this is where the offshore oil fields are located, at these indications here. And here's the tail of the bank, and for example, right here is where the Titanic sank. It doesn't say the depth, but compared to the fishing bank and the depth, if it had sank in here, they would have found it right away, but it was in very deep water. And we get a lot of interest in this one. These are models that are made by local fishermen. Some of them are deceased now. These were old salts that made those that sail on them, you know, and they're really accurate, and they're not professional. We have professional models here too, and same here. And of course we have an exhibit here displaying church items from our church. Marystown at the time, Marystown proper would have been predominantly a Catholic community. among of everything, we got exhibits like a spinning wheel and we have a loom here and a miniature spinning wheel. And it's getting harder and harder to have people who actually know how to use these things, you know. The generations are passed on, so the younger generation don't even know what it is, you know. We have to tell them what it is. And here we got probably a lot of old-time meat grinders and cooking paraphernalia. The old iron kettles and just a lot of stuff like that, you know. A lot of the younger generation come in and they don't know what it is. Well, even some of it is, I'm not that young, but it's way older than my generation, and I would have had to ask what it was, you know, and what it's used for. So we educated our staff, and most of them are knowledgeable about it anyway, and they interpret and tell them what it is and what it was used for, you know. This is a Sea Cadet uniform, which is sort of similar to the Boy Scout on that aspect, but this is like representing like the Navy. And I was a member of the Sea Cadets for years when I was young. And we train people how to march in discipline and obey orders and that kind of stuff. It's good training for use, so, you know. And it still exists, the organization still exists in Marystown. And here's more cooking stuff. There's a butter churn and ice cream makers, and this unique thing here is you put it on a drill, and when they shoot wild birds to cook them and eat them, this spins, and this rubber things take the feathers off the birds, which is a Newfoundland invention, by the way. Right here is this is my uncle, Sir Butler, his uniform. He was in World War II. He went overseas in the forestry unit and served 2 years. Then he joined the Royal Air Force in London, in England. And he flew missions. He wasn't a pilot, but he was like a maintenance person on the planes. And he flew missions over Germany. And we got his uniforms proudly displayed here.
I'm Albert Dober. I'm now the past president of the Museum Association. I was there for 44 years, so this year we got someone to replace me, and so I'm the honourable past president now of the museum. The area that you're looking at here now is a typical one-room school that was quite prevalent here in the Marystown area years gone by. All grades were in the one grade with one teacher, and we got a sample of all the desks that were used over the years here, and we had hoped to have people come in and say to, you know, when I was in school I sat in this type here, chair here, and we get them to sit in the chair and get a picture taken, but we didn't have space enough for that, so we put in a sample of all the different desks, school desks that were used over the years, and so parents can sort of identify, you know, I sat in this type chair when I was in school, and so on and so forth. So it's quite an attraction that we have here of a one-room school.
How many students would you have in a classroom?
Oh, there would be a very small one. There would possibly be, all the grades may not be there because with the population, you'd have about maybe 20 or 25 students. 25 would be a maximum, I would think, in a one-room school. Around 20 to 25 possibly. You cover most of the grades. There'd be no kindergarten, for example. You start off with grade 1, and you might have one person in grade 1, say, for example. And you might have nobody else until you get up to grade 4, where you'd have another person possibly. But you'd eventually go possibly to have 2 or 3 people in the higher grades, possibly in grade 11, the graduating class for the schools at that time. Yeah.
And the teacher would teach all the subjects?
All subjects and all grades, yes. I think the children benefit from it because they were listening to what the teacher was saying about the next grade or the next subject, and so they're always getting extra instruction by listening to what the teacher was doing, say with the grade that they were not in at the present time. So there was some benefit from it, and we had some very bright people, made a success of life that had gone through the one-room school, and they were quite plentiful in small communities, really, and in Newfoundland. But in this area here, there's possibly half a dozen one-room schools.
Yeah.
This is a sample of all the old books that were used in school over the years, and we're pushed for space here. Really, we don't have space enough to display properly all the items that we have here, and we're still trying to get an extension to our building so that we can get do things that we're not doing here now. For example, we don't do any major demonstrations anymore here now. We're trying to get into that, and but you have to have space to do that then. See? Here again we have an old-time kitchen, but it's so crammed now we can't possibly see all the things there, but everything in that particular room here now was possibly in a kitchen in the olden days, when the kitchens were much larger. And we have our old-time couch, which was the resting place for some people. Maybe the older person in the family would take a rest in that in the night time. And we have the David carriage here, which was used, and that hasn't changed much over the years, really. It's much the same. We have a lady dressed over there in the costumes of the day, and we have their kitchen cabinets. That's all the cabinets they had. They generally had a wood stove, so that's a wood stove of the possibly back in the 1920s, really, that was used then. And we have the old-time washer, which was an old-time washer and wringer all in one. And the clothes were generally hung out of doors during the better part of the season. And this over the stove, they had a rod for hanging clothes to dry from the heat of the stove, and that was their clothes dryer there, you know what I mean, over the ages. And they generally had oil lamps. There was no electricity at the time, so they had an oil lamp that provided light for the people. And but the kitchen was much bit larger there, a bigger table, for example, eating table there, much larger, and there was a baby chair in the kitchen as well. But the kitchens were much larger, and what we had hoped to have people be able to walk around the kitchen and see things for themselves rather than looking at it from a distance. And there was an old-time clock always on the wall there to give the time of the day for them, yes.
How long have you been involved with the museum?
I've been involved since 1980, and so it was a job to get people to take chairmanship, so I was about 3 or 4 years trying to get someone to replace me, but last year we found somebody, and so I'm taking a little break now for a while we're getting started again, I suppose, yes.
Here?
This is an old-time bedroom here, and you see everything is crowded the same way, but everything is in there really. That was their bathroom really over there with a jug there to wash face and so on and so forth in, and the beds were made of mostly feather beds then. So that's a feather bed we have there for the mattress, and that's a typical bedroom. Again, it's overcrowded, and people cannot, go in and walk around and see things as they have to see it from a distance, sort of thing. And this here again is an old. Everyone had a stage, a store outside somewhere, where they stored everything else, and possibly did most of their work outside. And this is a typical fisherman's stage, I suppose, building. So we kept everything in there. He had his wheelbarrow there, and his ropes and twines, and you can't see the stove, but they made a stove out of a little barrel, and they had a stove in their workroom as well. So this was considered a store that most every family had one. Yes.
So what was your occupation?
Pardon?
What was your occupation before 1980s?
I was superintendent of the district of education. That's where I retired from that, and I'm 30, almost 40 years now retired.
And what are your memories of Marystown in those times?
Marystown was not a fairly prosperous place, but there was some prosperity here. The fishery was the big occupation, and then they went into shipbuilding, which you went through up there. For years they had shipbuilding here, and then they had a fish plant here, which made it a more economic community. But we were typical of communities back in the early 20s possibly, and we didn't have all the facilities, like we didn't have water and storage. We didn't have electricity until 59 sort of, and we're sort of a typical outward community in Newfoundland really, and we weren't connected by roads or anything until roughly the 70s, and as things happened there and modernization came to the community changed considerably. It was much larger population, more work in the place as well, and a lot of people moved into Marystown under the resettlement program when they started resettling the small communities at the bays and the islands, and so the population grew within a bit faster than it would possibly naturally grow. Yes. We're pushed for space here. We have approximately 5,000 artifacts here now. We should have about 8,000 or 10,000 in. We're after losing that much of the artifacts, and most of them have been destroyed really because people didn't have any use for them anymore, and they just went to the garbage really. That was unfortunate really, and also we didn't have space enough to store them until we get an extension, but we're still trying to get an extension, and perhaps one of these days we'll be successful.
Yes, right here we have our book, History of Marystown and Mortier Bay, and myself, co-chair of the museum, and Mr. Albert Dober, the chairperson, and board of directors member Gerald Cheeseman, who's unfortunately passed on since. Spent about 5 or 6 years compiling this book, and we interviewed a lot of senior citizens who since passed away, because this was prior to 2010. We published this in 2010, and So we included a lot of our interviews and researched a lot of historic facts, stuff that we didn't have a clue existed, you know. We found out a lot about our town. So we have it in this book. We're going to work on a sequel to it because there's a lot more information. And it's amazing. And we got this recorded for posterity, which is great. We're so proud of it. And there's the three gentlemen. Of course, we had a lot of help too from the locals, you know, and people. So we sell these here at the museum for $25. If anybody wants to pick up or order a copy, we certainly be glad to supply it. This is another short glimpse and of the war veterans. These are local war veterans. So this is my uncle also, another uncle, World War I. And so both of these are local people that were in World War I. This man unfortunately died in World War I, but my uncle survived the war. We got a lot of interesting artifacts. We have a display case here of all the minerals that are found in Newfoundland. There's from the iron ore right to the fluorspar, which is mined locally in St. Lawrence, which is very rare. It's the only place in North America. I think the other place it's mined is in Mexico. And these are a lot of unique to Newfoundland minerals and stones that are mined in Newfoundland. Some fishing parchment. These are actual barrels that were used. There was a fish trading company here in Marystown, James Beard Limited, which was founded in St. John's. It's gone extinct now, but these are actual barrels from that business, which folded up back in the 1950s. It folded up. We open with our main workers, our students and our JCP workers in probably first part of July, last part of June, and we're open then till October. From that on, we're open. We close the building, but we're open on a calling basis from then on. We leave our numbers in the public and on our sites, and myself or one of the board members will come in and do a tour at any time during the year. Down below, we have which helps support the museum. We have a little retail store that sells a mattress. We call it a mattress store. And the mattresses are locally made in Newfoundland in Harbour Grace, and that helps sort the museum, and it helps provide a job for a couple of people. And we're open all year round down there, and it's probably from 9 to 5 in the daytime. This display here would be an example of some of the stuff that we retail in the local stores and shops in Marystown. And some of the businesses that were here are, there's Flynn's, Martyr Bay Provisions, they operated in Marystown. Reddy's operated in Marystown. James Beard, as I mentioned over there, and Wiscombe's and Murley's. These were the most well-known retail stores in Marystown. And some of this stuff here is back from the 40s and 50s, actual examples, you know. Certain tobacco, the purity syrups, the old-time mixed ground something. I don't know what, tobacco. It's yeah, and the pipes and the old hair clippers. So it's a little curiosity cabinet, really. This is shoe display. Old what a cobbler would have, you know. All the tools cobblers would have. And this is our medicinal cabinet.
There's the old time shoes.
Okay. These are the first two doctors in Marystown. Dr. Mosley and Dr. Harris. And some of actually doctor's, this is actually doctor's bag. This was Dr. Harris's bag. So I guess,
Did you create special medicine or ointments here in Newfoundland?
some, yes. I mean, there was a firm here, Duralist Oil, and some of the examples there, they would like cod liver oil was an old-time Newfoundland memory medicine, and they used to produce that. And some of them are other brand names, like, but a lot of these are not in use now, but actually in some of these containers are the actual medicine still in there,
Do you have a favorite section in this museum?
Me, I think I pertain to the boats. Where I worked at the shipyard all my life, and this boat here, these here, they were 4 minesweepers built in Marystown for the use in the Second World War. They were originally started off as fishing boats, and when the war broke out, they turned them into minesweepers. And the 4 of them were stationed in the English Channel during the war. Apparently all 4 survived the war, and I think 3 more came back. They were brought back into the province. And after the First World War, we were building these here on the beaches. They're turn schooners. They were large, very fast ships, and they would trade salt fish between Marystown and Spain and Newfoundland, Spain, and down to the West Indies, and they'd bring back sugar and stuff like that, and bring back from different countries in the fish trade. So they were very historic boats.
There's one big thing about this museum, I don't know if I can mention it to you. We don't have hardly any pictures here. We have exactly the item that's displayed. You can handle it, you can hook at it and take pictures of it. But there's most of the museums have pictures of things, but we got the actual items here themselves. And Con mentioned to him that we're open to the public all year round. The public can get in for tours anytime. And we're trying to do major demonstrations now, like we're trying to demonstrate the oil fields of Newfoundland and the different old-time trades like knitting and mat making and rugs. And we also have a loom, an old-time loom here that used to work, and we're going to get people into using a loom to do certain materials as well then. And we wrote this book here.
I described the book to her.
Yeah, and we're in the process now of doing volume 2 of that, because there's items in it we didn't get covered the first time, and we're going to try to cover them now the next 10 or 15 years to make it a volume 2 book as well.
Yeah, this is our park. We call it the Harbour View Park, and we during the summer we put out our picnic tables, and it's open to the public for free. You can have a picnic here, you can get married here, you can have a little party here, and it's first when we opened it, we got it open about 10 years now or more, and we used to have musical performances down here, but it's kind of dropped off by the wayside, the music, because it's hard to get workers to volunteers. The giant hay rake that was used here in Marystown for people cutting hay for cattle and horses. This building here, we have a canteen there, so we serve little snacks and stuff when there's events going on. And we got our little gazebo there. And like I say, it's open to free if anybody just wants to come here and relax and read a book or whatever. We got these huge engines. These are from ships. These are ships' engines, and deck engines and generators and pumps, and this one over on that side is the engine from a Newfoundland schooner. and that was belonged to the Savelle. The name of the ship was the Savelle. And we got our little display platform here, overlooking the harbour. We need to trim our trees down a little, I guess. But it's a beautiful view here. A great place to have a picnic. And this is Marystown South. And down that way is the Canning Bridge, which goes across to Marystown South. And right directly across are a few little glamping units. So great place for tourists to stay in the summertime.
Do you have many tourists during the summer?
Oh yes, we do. We have many tourists. I'm a member of the Heritage Run Tourism Association also, and we run the tourist chalet in Goobies and one here in Marystown. And usually early May we start getting a lot of tourists because that's the iceberg season. And we're still getting them now, even though most of the museums and parks are closed, we're still getting tourists. One of the reasons why I'm interested in ships so much and shipbuilding, my dad, Captain Edmund Fitzpatrick, he was a sea captain all his life, and he used to go on schooners and schooner trade between here and Nova Scotia and different provinces. And he was captain on the oil tankers, and his last job as captain, he was the captain of the Lady Anderson. She was a Newfoundland hospital ship, and she'd go around all the south coast and Mortier Bay and Placentia Bay with doctors and nurses, visiting small communities where there was no roads or no hospitals. And sometimes I went on her as just for a little trip, me and my brother, and in closer places. And so I'm really proud of him for that. So that's why I'm so interested. When he retired in '67, the hospital ship was because the people could access hospitals better than by boats and roads and everything, and he went as harbour master, harbour pilot at the Marystown shipyard and rigger foreman. He's passed on since, but he left him with all this interest in ships and boats. Out of all the ships we have, model ships, especially Newfoundland ships here at the gallery, this ship here is probably the most well-known and people are most familiar with. Especially the older generations, they come in and they say, "Oh yeah, my dad was on this. We got vaccinated on that ship. My grandmother went to the hospital on that ship." And just about everybody knows the Lady Anderson. It was from 1929, 30 up to 1967, and mostly across the south coast. From here towards Port aux Basques, because that was the most isolated part of Newfoundland. But when the roads started to go down to the settlements and the resettlement came in and hospitals were building along the way, then she was made redundant over there. But then they transferred to Placentia Bay here, and we had so many small settlements and islands within Placentia Bay that she patrolled that bay from say up the tip of the peninsula, Limeline, St. Lawrence, Marystown, and down to Arnold's Cove and to Placentia. There was a hospital in Burin and a hospital in Placentia, so she would transfer patients back and forth. It was consistent of the captain and the crew. I think there was an engineer and 2 deckhands and a cook, my dad and first mate. What you see, this area with the windows, they had a clinic there, and it was medicinal supplies in there, and everything, like a doctor's clinic on the boat. And they didn't transport people in groups. Usually, be only one person would be sick or in an accident, and they would transport that person very fast to the nearest hospital, or they would bring doctors to the settlement, and they'd have vaccinations. Say it was the whooping cough or the measles or these diseases, or tooth extractions, broken leg. She was a little hospital boat, and that was it. And she did a great service, probably saved many lives. One of the first doctors on the Lady Anderson was Dr. Nigel Rusted, and he wrote a book on the boat. It's kind of a well-known book in Newfoundland called The Devil Deep Down There, and a very interesting book on the first years of the Lady Anderson and his experiences and the many places they visited and the many conditions they came across, you know.